And my first orange pill was the Bitcoin Standard, which taught me the history of money, why the financial system is really broken, and what Bitcoin is. But what put everything into context for me was really the price of tomorrow. And you wrote that before the pandemic, talking about this idea of how, first of all, hope is a driving, motivating force within economics, hope for a better life, and that the American dream espouses this idea that you can come from anywhere, and if you're innovative, if you take risk, and if you're a good person who works hard, you can achieve a good life for yourself and your family. But it's become increasingly difficult to do so. And so the pandemic exacerbated those issues. So I'm kind of curious, where I want to start is, how has the world changed since you wrote that book? Maybe what were you right about, spot on about, that you're kind of surprised? And maybe where were you wrong?
I think everything in the book is playing out like I predicted. So we live in a system that requires ever greater manipulation to stay solvent. And that system is colliding against a free market force driven by technology. And when we say technology, remember, all technology is a name for the thing that we put into our ideas that make the world better, that solve our problems. And so we build on top of people who went before us, and we get better and better at things. And if we get better and better at things, and we only use the things that show up better in our lives, we look for more value, then you would think that force would drive prices down. And then if that force drives prices down, then why do prices go up of everything? And then you realize that you live in this warped system that must drive prices up to stay solvent. And there's two exponential trends moving against each other. One trying to drive prices down, which will reinforce itself as we try to find more value, and one that every time we find more value has to steal more of that value created in productivity gains and transfer it from us to very few people. So I'd say largely, when I first wrote the book, some people questioned the us versus them chapter. Why did you put that in? And you could, just because you could totally see what it would do to society if you kept manipulating money at that regard, what that concentration of, that centralization of all power would do to society.
Well, I would argue that the world is more polarized, more divided than when you wrote that book. How do you think Bitcoin serves as a tool to bring people together? Because one thing that I love about this community is pushing the idea that it is apolitical. It's for people of all backgrounds, all ages. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's about the core value of building a new economy based on sound money, not manipulation.
Yeah, so I think if you start, and a lot of people try to start with why Bitcoin, and they're trying to explain why Bitcoin. But if you turn the tables and you ask somebody, why is theft required in money to live in a productive society? And so, because inflation, nobody votes for inflation. We think we have a democracy, yet the most important thing in the democracy, you don't have a vote in. So that theft, that transfer of your purchasing power to somebody else is embedded into the entire monetary system of the world. You just have to ask yourself a really simple question. If theft was a requirement of the base level in the world, what would society look like on top of that? And you could from there, and so just ask somebody, what would society look like? And the people that were the greatest at taking money, your politicians would look very much like they look today. All the world, if you were, let's say you're a nonprofit organization trying to solve a problem in the world. Where do you get your money from for the nonprofit? And so those nonprofits would obviously go to crypto funds to get their money. And the more and more kind of theft that you embedded into the base layer, the more it would move. And even people within that system thinking they were trying to solve the problem would be in fact making the whole system worse. And then everyone from that system, by trying to escape that system with enough money, by if I buy more houses, I can get enough money to escape that system, they would be making the system worse around the world as well. And so what you have to start with really simple question, right? That's why I started with deflation. Is productivity deflationary? Or say, does technology produce productivity, and is that productivity deflationary? Answer simple, yes. Then why aren't prices getting cheaper around the world? There is no answer other than manipulation of money. And then when you go down the manipulation of money track, you just say, what would society look like? It would be a mirror image of that manipulation over time. And then what would it look like in a new world on Bitcoin? And if you, the question, and I think this is largely for much of the audience too, is because we measure a system from a system, it's hard to see what's available in the new system. And what typically happens in any business as well, the creative destruction that comes from a new business is reimagining what a world could look like. And for that, you don't have something that you can measure. You have to intuit. You have to predict people's responses on new inputs and what those new inputs would do, and then what they would do based on that new information, and then what would that look like. And when you're good at that, you create something that was never there before, that changes behavior wildly, that creates value for society, and it creates value. So if we are all living in a system, measuring a system from a system, and very few, you'll go, maybe not in Bitcoin so much, but you'll go from most people you talk to are going to measure their houses from the system, measure everything built upon the system. It's really hard to see how that new system would operate. And typically what they do, where I see most of the FUD against Bitcoin, is really bringing in qualities of the legacy system that is terrible into a new system that will not operate like that at all.